now welcome onto the stage Dawn Payne, CEO and co-founder of Aurora, Kenyatte Nelson, Chief Membership and Customer Officer at the Co-op, Zoe Harris, CMO on the Beach, and Katie Jackson, Chief Marketing Officer for Channel 4. Thanks ever so much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I hope you all had a lovely lunch and are ready for quite a deep and thoughtful conversation. My name is Dawn Payne, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Liverpool-headquartered creative agency Aurora, and a long-standing member of WACL. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today with this incredible group of people to have a conversation which is, let's face it, existential, I think, in the world that we're in now. When my friend and fellow WACLer, Leanne Ray, who's here today, first started talking to me about this, it was at the back end of last year, and who knew in just 2 short months how the landscape would have changed already. So I thought, just to start, I'd give everybody just a little bit of a heads up in terms of, if you don't know who WACL is, who we are and what we do. So, our mission at WACL is to accelerate gender equality in our industry for the good of all. We are an incredible group of women, and we have been around for over 100 years. We're comprised of over 300 of the UK's top C-suite female leaders from the worlds of advertising, media, brand and communications. So we've been championing gender equality for a long, long time. Our aim, and we are unequivocal with this, is to drive towards 50% of CEOs being women by 2045, which is, of course, doubling the rate of progress that we are seeing at the moment. So incredibly important work. And what we have underpinning what we do are what we call our 5 levers for change. And with the work that our WACL teams do, these themes cut across all of our work. So we want to change the language of leadership. We want to promote for potential. It's all about flexible first. In the workplace, we can all be a woman's health hero. And what we're going to talk about today is the notion of working like the world is watching. And what does that mean? It's about creating workplaces where women can thrive. But it's also, and very topically, given the panel that we have today, it's also about properly representing women across our work as consumers, as audiences. We're an incredibly powerful audience. And of course, we need advertising more than ever to be a beacon of positive representation. Yet this isn't just an ethical or moral imperative. Of course it's not. There's a business case. We saw from the Unstereotype Alliance research that there is a huge lift from inclusive advertising across both sales and brand equity, with sales experiencing a huge 16% lift off the back of inclusive advertising. So we know that categorically inclusion equals income. And yet, despite the research, there's still so much work to be done. We see that people over the age of 40 are barely represented, and when we think about women, even less so. Only 1% of ads featuring people with a disability. And don't even get me started on social mobility and class. When we look at some research from we see that still 56% of people outside of London are feeling that they are being caricatured or not being represented accurately. So representation is at the beating heart of what WACL does. And we know ourselves that we still have more to do. So not least our own focus outside of London. So I'm super excited to say that today, and watch this space, we are going to be more formally crystallising UpNorth. We're going to be building on work that's already been happening in the regions with events that we've done in Liverpool and Manchester in recent years, and very, very much building on the work that was happening several years ago and continues to be championed by my great friend and WACLer, Juliet Simpson, who's came down from Scotland to be with us today. So expect to see a lot more happening in the regions. And then the other stop press, hot off the press news, is that our talent festival on the 20th of May, which has historically only ever been held in London, is now going to have a regional hub and a regional activation to that happening in Manchester, and tickets will be on sale soon. So loads of really, really good stuff coming down the track. Without further ado, let's get into the convo. So I've got this amazing group of people. Let's chat about what each of those guys is doing in this space. Welcome, Power Panel. I'm going to start with yourself, Kenyatta, if that's okay.
Sure.
Obviously, the Co-op's been very vocal in recent weeks about the importance of DE&I.
Yes.
So talk to us about, against the backdrop of the world, what does representation mean to the Co-op, both as an organisation, but also in terms of its comms?
Yeah, look, it's critically important for us as a member-owned business, because we're owned by the members who shop and engage with us and not by shareholders. We position ourselves as an organization on the right side of people. And so because we're owned by the people, we can do right by them. For us, it was about three things, really. It was about making sure we had the data to look across the organization and say, what is social mobility, ethnicity, diversity? What does it look like across our 55,000 colleagues? What's our ambition in that space? And then how do we measure it? I sit here really proud to say I work for an organization where 10% of our LTIP is aligned to social mobility, diversity, and inclusion. And so, we not only have said it's an ambition for us, we put our money where our mouth is with our executive team.
Amazing. And Katie, from your perspective, from Channel 4's point of view, I mean, it's a bit of a slam dunk question, I guess, but I mean, any kind of additional comments to add to that from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say Channel 4 exists to create change through entertainment, and we talk about that through the lens, again, the power of three, through three different prisms. So we talk about representing unheard voices, and that has to run through every single division of the organisation. Talk about challenging with purpose, and we talk about reinventing entertainment as well. And I think whilst that may feel like it's relating just to what we're making, what we're creating, what we're producing, it also translates into our culture, right? So 58% female representation across the organisation, really well balanced at a senior level. We launched our first equity strategy last year, which we're really, really proud of. And I've got to say this because of where we are. We're a national broadcaster, so nations and regions representation, also very important. We're headquartered in Leeds. We have offices in Manchester, Bristol, Glasgow, as well as London. So we take it really seriously.
Amazing. And I think, Kenyatta, just to pick up on specifically some of the work that you're doing as an organisation, because I think regionality, immediately we start to think about class, background, privilege, accent. Can you talk to us a little bit more about kind of social mobility and also how important belonging is to your organisation?
100%. So people talk DEI. We've changed the rubric to social mobility, diversity, and inclusion. And the reason we have social mobility included is currently the Co-op is campaigning to make social mobility and social economic belonging a protected class. So we're saying, when we look at our pay gap analysis we just did, we're seeing pretty significant pay gaps, not necessarily by gender, but by socioeconomic class. So when you look at male and female colleagues who came from higher socioeconomic classes versus lower, irrespective of where they are in the organization, that's where you're seeing the gap. So for us, and I go back to, I think it's Warren Buffett who said this, three of the things that drive all of our trajectory in life are three things that we can't control. When you were born, where you were born, and who you were born to. And those three things have a massive impact on your trajectory in life. I'm not suggesting for a second that hard work doesn't matter, of course it does. But some of the hardest working people on the planet are also the poorest, right? And so for us, social mobility and social economic belonging is critically important for us. We track it, we measure it, we have a plan in place. And like I said, it's part of the LTIP.
Right. And is it something that you are weaving, because obviously that's from an organisational perspective, is that being brought into the communications? How does social mobility live there?
There's a guy by the name of Zahor who works in the organisation. He'd be very happy to hear me say this, but he is our social mobility, diversity and inclusion officer in the business. And what we have, with the support of Shireen, who's our CEO, all of the business units and all of the supporting functions, and so I run membership and customer as Chief Membership and Customer Officer. We have an action plan. So across every business and across every support function, There is a social mobility, diversity and inclusion action plan that we measure.
Amazing.
From a marketing standpoint, we look at the agencies that we partner with. We look at the creative we create and source, the media we buy.
Yep.
And we also look at the members and the customers that we acquire to make sure that they are in line with what is the social, economic, and diverse profile of the UK.
Wow, amazing. I mean, it's such trailblazing work, I think, that you're doing in that space.
You know what? People say this, right? But it's not really. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not curing cancer or saving kittens or delivering babies. We're doing the right thing for the people who pay us in kind with their engagement, their hard-earned pound notes. And I firmly believe, as does the co-op, that if you do the right thing for people, they will pay you back. And so it's a critically important thing for us, but it's not altruism. It's just the right thing to do.
For sure. And Zoe, I think at this juncture, I'd like to kind of flip into perhaps a bit more of a kind of creative discussion with yourself about the work, and I guess around how you think about representation. And I know when we chatted, you talked about that idea of how you represent a very true version of families in the UK today. So talk to us about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I might regret this, but who here is familiar with the On the Beach advert? Put your hands up, just lie so I don't look like a total dick as well. So we would say On the Beach we're unashamedly populist, and if you book a holiday with On the Beach, you get free airport lounge access, and the marketing wank behind that is that we're democratising things that normally rich people can do for all of our customers, right? And so in our advertising, when we briefed our agencies, we talked about wanting to show ordinary families having the best time of their lives on a beach holiday. And what we got back from most agencies, and apologies if any of them are here now, was posh families on deserted beaches, reading books quietly with their kids, like unrealistic kids who've never had an argument in their life. And we were like, no, that is not a holiday. And so for those of you that have seen our advert, we've got an actually cast of father and son, but I'll tell you a comment from Twitter which might sum it up for someone who's not familiar. The fat family in the On the Beach advert concern me. I find it disgusting that they are letting fat, unwashed scum like that into an airport lounge.
And
now
that's Twitter for you.
Or X.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And the reason I read that comment is as a reminder. So I'm in that dangerous spot now between seeing Twitter and before our brand tracker comes back. So I'm like shitting it now that's what the nation is thinking about advertising. But what I will see when the brand tracker comes back is that most families, including 5-star mass market Britain, relate to our advert, relate to the family. That's like my kids. And that advert is 4 times more effective pound for pound than our competitors. And so I would say it is about representation, but it's also about commercial effectiveness. And if you can truly represent and resonate with your target audience, you will see the commercial payback. A bit like you said, it's not even about doing the right thing, it's just a commercially sensitive
100%.
thing as well.
Absolutely right.
It's quite fascinating, isn't it? It reminds me of when I was back client side, and when I was marketing director at Nintendo. I kind of pulled away. I went rogue. I pulled away from our European marketing team, and exactly what you said, wanted to make sure that our work was specifically relevant to the UK. And I remember I used to get described as she's like the Ken Loach of the kind of marketing kind of community, and in that kind of desire to be kind of more representative of what's actually happening in real people's lives. So really kind of resonant what you're kind of chatting about there, Zoe.
Yeah, and it's quite difficult to do because we're all as well used to seeing this perfect glossy advertising life. And so I think that's my other takeout, is if you look at it and you don't feel a bit scared, you probably haven't gone far enough to really represent what everyday Britain is like.
Yeah. And I think the other important piece, Casey, just kind of to bring in your perspective on this, is obviously Channel 4 is a very unique brand. You've got advertisers, you've got consumers, you've got your whole very specific remit. One of the pieces we talked about was the business case around inclusive advertising. So can you talk to us a little about kind of the commercial implications of kind of inclusivity?
Yeah, my sales colleagues in the audience are going to be delighted about this question. We're obviously unique in the sense that, as you say, we're both an advertiser and a much-loved brand with our viewers, but also a media owner, right? And And that puts a slightly different onus on us to really consider how we talk about representation for those different audiences. So we don't really have to look further than the Paralympics to just start to really understand and get into the way we can build audiences that we can then pass on to our advertisers who are really engaged around the subject of representation. So 2012, of course, when Channel 4 first aired the Paralympics, we brought around 10 million viewers to the table, proverbially speaking. Last year, we're now bringing a third of the viewing population. Over 20 million viewers over that period of time coming to engage in a subject that is inherently about disabled sport. It's sport, but it's disabled sport. And I think that's really powerful for us to then be able to go and communicate to advertisers who want to engage around the subject of representation with an engaged audience around something like the Paralympics. But I think it's not just about editorially what our programming looks like. We're also looking at initiatives that most people in the audience will be aware of, like our Diversity in Advertising Award. So for the last 6 or so years, we've given away £1 million worth of free airtime each year to advertisers who meet a brief that we put out into the market that is all around specific parts of representation, right? And over the last years, we've therefore delivered £6 million worth of free media to advertisers. But the legacy is what's important. So last year, the brief that we put out was all around inclusive by design, with the intention that actually this isn't just about representation of specific groups. This is about fundamentally rewiring how advertisers and brands are thinking about accessibility, how they're thinking about representation right from the beginning, not just through a casting process, just in and of itself. So there's a number of different ways that we are thinking about it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's kind of just so encouraging, I think, against the backdrop of seemingly how the world appears at the moment, to hear the power of all of the work that you're all doing from such different types of brands, that there are so many different ways in which representation and inclusivity can show up. And I think when we chatted, I think the first time, Kenyatta, we talked about almost that idea of if there is a rallying cry or something actionable for people to perhaps take away from this session, if I ask each of you, what would it be? If we think about what we're doing as advertisers and as marketers, what's the thing that we can contribute to the world right now?
Yeah, look, I think in my mind there's 2 things. I go back to the thing I mentioned before, which is in the context of social mobility, diversity, and inclusion, make sure you get the data. Understand the reality of what you're facing into, because that will make you a much more powerful advocate, because you can speak not just from a point of passion, but also from a point of information and data and understanding. Number 2, know why you're doing it. What's the rationale for this choice? Why are you leaning into this space? Who are you seeking to serve? How are they underserved? There should be a strategic lens, and then lastly, measure it, because what gets measured gets done, right? I think if we do those 3 things, we'll find ourselves in a much, much better place. And to the points made by the panel, this is not just the right thing to do, it is also very commercially sensible. The most successful businesses, particularly in the US and the S&P 500, those who lean into diversity of thought and visual diversity perform better. And so the proof in data is there, that doing this in the right way, doing it in a thoughtful way, leads to a much more productive and better outcome for the business and for society as a whole.
Zoe, what do you think?
And I think you're right about data, and I'd support that. I think the other thing is just our own reference point. So what are people talking about at the school gates, at the pubs, at kitchen tables across Britain? How well are we as marketing people in touch with that? And remembering all sides of that too. So on the beach, we got caught out, Laura's here, we thought it's hilarious that if you were in New York or on holiday in America when Donald Trump won the election, we'd fly you home early from your holiday for free, which we thought was hilarious. We actually had some really pissed off customers and analysts asking us questions about that. So I'm not saying we were wrong to do that, but I think just being aware of all opinions, all views, and checking in with yourself and with the views around you when we're out and about, and remembering not all of life is like this. I think it's easy to get wrapped up, isn't it, sometimes in the things that we get to do, and just listening and really observing in day to day and taking that back into work alongside the data is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, Katie, what's your thought on this?
No pressure, coming last. I think people are increasingly quite scared of provoking conversation and progressing a dialogue around important subjects that they feel nervous they're not going to get right. So I would say a really important rallying cry is be brave, be bold, not for the sake of it, be very clear, as you two have said, on what you're trying to affect change around, but don't shy away out of fear that you're going to get it wrong, because the only way we will create change is by sometimes making a few fuck-ups.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I think we will need to draw to a close. Sadly, I could literally have this conversation all day. So thank you to my wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
Proudly headquartered in the north, big office in the north. So thank you so much. And hopefully, if everyone has just got a little bit of inspiration about the work that we can all do in the world of advertising and marketing to drive change, then hopefully you might have had some real advice here today. So thank you so much, everybody.